I've noticed something in many of my older patients. After lunch or dinner, they often pour a hot cup of tea and sit back to relax. They believe it's a good thing. Light on the stomach, natural, good for digestion. A perfect way to end a meal. And at first glance, it seems right. No one thinks a cup of tea could possibly cause any harm. But the truth is that very cup of tea is sometimes blocking the essential nutrients your brain desperately needs. I've seen many people eat well, take their vitamins regularly, and go on daily walks. And yet, they all share the same complaint: afternoon fatigue. Foggy mind. Memory slowly slipping away, without knowing why. And sometimes, the problem isn't the meal itself. It's what happens right after. Let me tell you about George. He did almost everything right, yet his memory kept fading. It wasn't until we looked at the small habit right after his meals that I discovered what so many people tend to overlook. George is one of my longtime patients. He's 68, lives in Arizona, still drives himself to the grocery store, still plays golf on weekends. Honestly, if you just looked at him you'd think he was healthier than most people his age. George eats well. Every morning, he has oatmeal, fruit, and a multivitamin. Lunch is grilled chicken, steamed vegetables, a little brown rice. He's very disciplined, doesn't smoke, limits sugar, drinks plenty of water. But in recent months, George started to worry. He told me, "I can't focus like before. I'm slower at remembering names. By the afternoon, I feel tired, like my brain is running slower." At first, I thought maybe it was age-related, or a lack of sleep. But all his numbers were normal. Blood pressure, blood sugar, cardiovascular health, nothing alarming. So I looked deeper: what he ate, how he slept, how he moved. And then I asked a simple question: what do you usually do after lunch? George answered immediately, like it was second nature: I make a cup of black tea. Read the paper for about half an hour. It helps with digestion, helps me relax. And right then, I knew I had to ask more: do you take your vitamins or iron supplements after the meal? He nodded, of course. Right after I eat. Then I drink my tea. That was the issue. Black tea, especially strong black tea, contains a group of compounds called tannins. Tannins can bind with iron, zinc, and vitamin B12, making them harder for the body to absorb. The result? Even though George was eating well, the key nutrients weren't reaching his central nervous system, especially his brain. He didn't know that the daily cup of tea after his meal was quietly erasing the benefits of the vitamin he so carefully took. Just one small habit, but it had a big effect on how his brain was functioning. When George told me about his cup of tea after meals, I knew I had to explain things more clearly, not to make him stop drinking tea, but to help him understand what was actually happening inside his body. Tea, especially strong black or green tea, contains a compound called tannin. It sounds harmless, but tannin acts like a net. It binds to minerals like iron, zinc, and even vitamin B12. When you drink tea right after a meal, especially one with meat or supplements, tannins attach to those nutrients and prevent your body from absorbing them. It doesn't cause a stomachache, it doesn't cause diarrhea. It simply lets the nutrients pass through without your body getting anything from them. And this becomes especially important when we're talking about the brain. The brain needs iron to generate energy for neurons. It needs B12 to maintain the protective coating around nerves. It needs zinc to regulate the signals between neurons. If those nutrients are blocked, even partially, you'll start noticing subtle but clear changes: memory declines, mood shifts, trouble concentrating. I call it the silently starved brain. On the outside, you look fine. But inside, your nervous system isn't being nourished properly. And what worries me most is that so many older adults experience these symptoms, but think they're just normal signs of aging. They don't realize that one small change in habit could stop it from happening. I've seen many patients come in with the same kind of complaints. No pain, no fever, nothing alarming on paper. But deep down, they knew something was changing inside them. They'd tell me, "I don't feel as sharp as I used to. In the afternoon, I tend to space out, lose focus. Sometimes mid-conversation, I forget what I was about to say." And here's what stands out, most of them had the habit of drinking tea right after meals. Not once in a while, but every day. For years. This isn't just ordinary fatigue. These are early, very early, signs of nutritional deficiency in the brain. And if it continues unchecked, it could pave the way for something far more serious, cognitive decline, or worse, a silent mini-stroke without warning. I call these signs the faint signals before the storm. No one notices them, because they don't hurt. They're not urgent. But that quietness, that's what makes them the easiest to miss. If you often feel foggy after meals, if your memory's slipping, or your mood feels unpredictable, don't just assume it's because of age. Sometimes it's just the timing of a cup of tea. I'm not here to tell you to give up tea entirely. I understand, for many, it's part of a calming ritual that brings comfort after meals. But instead of sipping tea right after eating, try waiting at least 45 to 60 minutes. This window allows your body to fully absorb the nutrients from your food and any vitamins you've just taken. Once the main digestion process is underway, a cup of tea won't interfere as much. If you take supplements like iron, zinc, vitamin B12, or calcium, take them either 30 minutes before a meal, or at least 1 hour after. And never with tea. And if you still crave something warm right after eating, a cup of warm water or plain water is a wonderful alternative. It won't block nutrient absorption. This becomes especially important after age 60, when digestion and nutrient metabolism naturally begin to slow down. Even a small disruption in absorption can have a noticeable impact on your brain and overall well-being. I still remember the first time I met Evelyn. She walked into my office with a piece of paper covered in handwriting. A to-do list, questions for the doctor, medication times, all neatly written by hand. And then, as soon as she sat down, she looked at me and said, "Doctor, I wrote it all down. Because I don't trust my memory anymore." Evelyn was 72. She lived alone, fiercely independent, a former elementary school teacher. She had no major illnesses. Her blood pressure was fine. So was her blood sugar. But she said she didn't feel sharp anymore. She'd forget parts of a book while reading. Forget why she walked into the kitchen. And sometimes, she wasn't even sure of the words she had just said. So we went through her daily routine, step by step. Nothing stood out, until I asked, "Do you have any habits after breakfast or lunch?" She smiled gently. "Oh yes, I always brew a cup of black tea. Every day. After meals. That's also when I take my vitamins." Just like George. I explained how tannins in tea can interfere with nutrient absorption, how that cup of tea might be blocking the very nutrients her brain was craving. Evelyn didn't seem surprised. She just nodded quietly and said, "I'll try changing that." 3 weeks later, she came back. Still holding her notepad, but with fewer notes this time. She looked up, her eyes clear and bright. "I'm not sure if it's because I stopped drinking tea right after eating. But my mind feels lighter. Clearer. And I'm starting to trust my memory again. I don't believe it was just a coincidence." Sometimes, simply giving the body the space to absorb nutrients properly is all it takes to rekindle blood flow to the brain, to reawaken a part of memory that was never truly lost. I've realized one thing over many years of working with older patients. Most of them truly want to stay healthy, but they get caught up in very small misunderstandings. Like drinking tea after meals, no one thinks that could be harmful. Because tea is seen as natural, healthy, even full of antioxidants. And that's true, if it's taken at the right time. Or take another example, many people think taking vitamins is fine anytime, as long as they take them daily, it must be good. But if you take an iron pill and then drink tea right after, or take B12 and then have a dessert with green tea yogurt, your body can't fully absorb it. And that directly affects your energy and memory, every single day. Another common one I hear is that older adults often think, if I feel tired, maybe I just didn't sleep enough. If I forget someone's name, it's probably because I'm just getting old. But very few people consider that their brain might be undernourished, just because of a tiny daily habit. I don't blame them. Because no one taught us these things when we were young. And when we grow older, we simply follow what we see others doing. But that's exactly why I share stories like George's and Evelyn's, to remind you, sometimes, what's making you tired isn't your age. It's what you don't see happening after every meal. One thing I truly love about being a doctor is this: when a patient comes back and says to me, something feels different. No lab results needed. No machines involved. They just feel their mind is lighter. Their spirit is clearer. And their day starts off a little easier. One of my patients, Linda, age 70, lives in Michigan. She used to drink green tea right after every lunch, and take an iron supplement at the same time. When I explained what was happening, she simply said, "I didn't think a cup of tea could have that effect. But I'll try making a change." 3 weeks later, she came back with a smile. She said, "I don't know if it's from skipping tea after meals, but I don't feel that afternoon fog anymore. I can play with my grandkids longer. And I read without having to reread the same page 3 times." Her story isn't rare. When you stop doing something that blocks the brain, you don't have to add too much else, because your body begins healing in its own natural way. Just give your brain the chance to absorb the nutrients it needs, and you'll be surprised by the difference after 2 to 3 weeks. It's not magic, it's physiology, simple and gentle. I've always believed this: every meal isn't just about filling the stomach. It's an opportunity to nourish memory, emotion, and the clarity within us. And on that journey, small changes, like waiting an hour before having tea, or separating the timing between vitamins and tea, can make a noticeable difference. You don't have to change your whole life. Just one thing, done consistently. And you'll feel it in how you remember, how you think, and how you feel. The body doesn't need perfection. It needs kindness. Little by little, every day. So if you're hearing this, and you've ever felt like George, like Evelyn, like Linda, know this: you are not alone. We can't turn back time. But we can give our brain the best chance to stay with us, clear, and fully alive each day.